Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. Now, just to let you know, next week, in fact over the next couple of weeks, Perspectives will be just appearing just every now and again. It is, of course, holiday season. So do keep an eye out for our shows when they do appear. But as I say, over the next 2 weeks, they won't be every day as normal. So, but of course, a normal service will resume in about 3 weeks' time. But as I say, just keep an eye out for the odd show appearing over the next couple of weeks. But in the meantime, today's show, well, has Surrender Starmer lived up to his name once again? Well, the British government publishes its report on transnational repression, which has the Sikh community here in the UK fizzing with anger, as the word India actually only appears in this 70-odd page report only twice, and more as an afterthought. It appears Narendra Modi's visit last week has had his desired effect. And concerningly also for the British, a new law coming into force shortly from Starmer's government has everyone fearing to even open their mouths to speak at all. Unsurprisingly, it's taken a Sikh, as always, to publicly call out the danger of what's happening. And we finish off our look at the dangers of AI and its powerful potential as a propaganda tool. All this and more on today's show, but joining me, as always, is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our viewers out there. As Angus said, we will be sporadically popping up on your screen over the next few weeks. But again, if you miss us, by all means, check out some of our archive shows and add your comments there. You never know what you'll find, because, you know, crazy things have broken out on set before. Well, all right, maybe not so crazy, but hey, you might enjoy them anyway. So again, keep your comments rolling in. We will check in with the comments throughout the next 2 weeks as well. So I will send it back to you, Angus.
And indeed, you can still email us at message@satellitetv.com whilst we're away anyway, if there's anything you still like to bring to our attention. We will read those emails. Anyway, but in the meantime, today, James and I will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting Sikh community across the world. And as always, we will take a look at loads of great comments at the end of the show. So stay tuned for that. Right, James, let's get underway. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
We have been taking a look at AI and how it slowly changes the different perspectives of some of those who are kind of on the ledge in between different decisions or different policies, different ideas, and different belief systems. So again, we've looked at that, how it slowly just brings you in, and then we went and transitioned to the points where it actually starts to change the narrative. And although we did it over the last 3 nights, and tonight being the 4th, we've done it in a very short period of time, which really is just to give you the idea and to put the information forward. When it comes to the propaganda machine, they're a lot more subtle and they tend to take a longer stretch of time. They also use different parts of AI and technology to actually make the propaganda more personalized to the user. Now, when you are on applications such as Google, Twitter, or now X, Facebook, all of these different platforms like to store cookies and other data. They monitor the keystrokes. They monitor all of these different things depending on the programs and the platforms you're using and where your security settings are set. Now, when they are open to that type of intrusion, and you've agreed to it through the user agreements that none of us ever read, but again, if you don't go in and secure those settings, then they're just set at a default. Now, that allows these propaganda machines to understand when you look up, say, green underwear, you're all of a sudden going to be receiving all of these advertisements in your email, on your screens, and all over the place. You're going to get these targeted ads. And it's no different when it comes to the propaganda machine. Now, the propagandists, of course, we are specifically looking at India in the context of this week's report, but it also is very, very poignant and very direct that it could be Iran, it could be Iraq, it could be Russia, it could be China, it could be anybody that's trying to target a certain message and a certain narrative that may not be able to be seen in the regular narrative news media. That creates a very difficult point when it comes to your privacy. And also, of course, by using very personalized information, they can send the narrative to you in a way that's a bit more personal and can resonate with your emotion and other subconscious points of your your thought process that you don't even realize. And that is very scary. Tonight we're going to take a listen to another AI-generated report, and this here is more about the actual impacts of the AI on propaganda, and in specific, again, coming out of India. This is something that I hope that after tonight's show, you will actually give it a bit more in-depth look and really watch what information is coming into you, how you're disseminating that information, and how you look at what is a reliable news source or source of information and what is propaganda. With that said, I also hope that you will add in our comments section different examples of how the AI is impacting your life. And it could be through propaganda, or it could be other ways. And of course, it is a part of everyday life, whether we like it or not. So let's take a listen to this portion here.
Today, we're plunging into, well, a really critical and complex topic, AI, India, and global propaganda. We've pulled together a collection of reports, research, various insights, really to give you a shortcut to understanding this whole landscape. Our mission here is to uncover how one of the world's largest democracies is strategically using advanced tech for narrative control, and maybe more importantly, what that actually means for your information diet.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating here is that India's approach, it isn't just, a simple tech upgrade. It's more of a strategic evolution. It's this powerful fusion of something that already existed, a really robust disinformation architecture, now combined with new AI tools. Tools for hyper-personalization, for narrative manipulation, but on a scale we haven't really seen before. And the speed, the sheer volume of these AI-driven campaigns, it really challenges how we even detect, let alone respond to, these influence ops now.
Okay, so that point about a pre-existing architecture, that sounds key. To really get what AI is doing today, we probably need to look back a bit, right? At India's past operations. Indian Chronicles, that's a pretty stark example, isn't it? The one EU Disinfo Lab uncovered. What made that so impactful even before AI?
Well, it showed an extraordinary level of planning and just sheer persistence. This was a really intricate network, orchestrated, we know, by the Srivastava group, and it operated for, at least 15 years. Its main goal was pretty clear: systematically discredit nations like Pakistan and China globally, and, at the same time, solidify India's own image on the world stage.
And the tactics for Indian Chronicles, even pre-AI, were just, incredibly inventive, weren't they? I mean, think about this. Hijacking and actually resurrecting defunct groups, like over 10 UN Human Rights Council accredited NGOs, these zombie NGOs, some hadn't been active since the 70s.
Exactly, to get official access.
Right, to push pro-India narratives from inside. And they even resurrected the identity of dead people, like Professor Lou Bisson, just for credibility.
Yep. Yes, false credibility.
On top of that, this huge network of fake media outlets, over 750.
Across 119 countries.
And the crucial bit, the amplifier you mentioned, was Asian News International, ANI, basically laundering all this fake stuff into the real news cycle.
That's the term they use, laundering. ANI was essential.
Yeah.
And if we connect that to the bigger picture now, this pre-existing, quite sophisticated infrastructure, it basically provided a ready-made platform for AI to just slot into and accelerate. So the 2024 Indian general election became, a pivotal case study. It really showed AI not just scaling up the old tricks, but actually pioneering completely new ways of doing political communication.
Yeah, it's quite a contrast then, because we saw AI used in ways that seemed on the surface maybe constructive, like Prime Minister Modi's speeches being translated into lots of regional languages, Tamil, Telugu, Bengali.
In his own voice.
In his own voice, right? Using that government AI platform, Pashini. And then those hyper-personalized voter messages via WhatsApp, using voice cloning to address people by name. But then there's the definite flip side, the adversarial uses.
Exactly. Adversarial use, like AI-generated images showing PM Modi as a, saffron superhero or some kind of divine figure. And maybe more critically, that investigation by ICWI and ECO. It showed Meta, so Facebook, Instagram, actually approving AI-manipulated ads. Ads with explicit anti-Muslim hate speech, even calls for violence, which is, a clear violation of their own rules. It really shows the struggle platforms have.
So, okay, what does this all add up to for us, for you listening? AI is allowing this mass personalization of propaganda, right? Delivering these tailored messages straight to your phone, your device. It's blurring the lines between sort of public debate and private messages. It becomes an ideology accelerator, creating really emotional, highly shareable content that ties political ideas deep into cultural and religious symbols.
And this raises a really important question for everyone, I think, the concept of the liar's dividend. As people, as you, become more aware that pretty much any audio or video could be faked, there's a growing risk. The risk is that you might start dismissing real, authentic evidence of wrongdoing, just writing it off as, oh, it's just another deep fake. And that corrodes what we call epistemic trust, basically, our fundamental confidence in our ability to know what's real, which directly threatens democratic processes and, yeah, your ability to actually make informed decisions.
That's a really profound point. If you can't trust what you see and hear, I mean, where does that leave you when trying to make sense of things? This deep dive, it feels like we've only just scratched the surface of how AI is reshaping this whole global information space. It's clearly a complex and rapidly evolving battleground.
Definitely. And the trends we've looked at, they really point towards an escalating AI-powered arms race. It's pushing us towards something people are starting to call cognitive warfare, where the actual objective is to fundamentally shape your beliefs, your attitudes, and, yeah, ultimately your actions. So the question for you becomes, how will you navigate a world where reality itself feels like it's constantly under construction?
Something to really think about. We definitely encourage you to explore the sources we touched on today. And yeah, keep those critical thinking skills sharp. Until next time.
Now, of course, this is, again, an AI-generated report that is, although I will admit that I put in very narrow parameters so that I got the results that I wanted out of this simulated news report. And, of course, reports that they bring into it sometimes are real, sometimes are just pulled out of thin air, but it gives that air of authority and that air of urgency to certain points. Now, the big difference between the way that India is using today's social media and other forms of online media is a lot different than, say, television and newspapers of past. The reason for this is that there are different regulators. The FCC in the United States, which is the Federal Communications Commission. In Canada, we have the CRTC, the Canadian Radio and Television, whatever the regulators are. And I'm sure that they're in Britain. You've probably got your own regulators, Angus, that would step in if there was certain content that was being aired on television, on radio, or in the newspapers. So now, of course, we know that there are, especially for the main broadcast news agencies and the main networks, and they have a very strict code of conduct and regulatory framework that they have to operate in. They cannot just sell advertising space, whether it's a commercial or an advert or whatever. They can't just sell that and then walk away going, well, we don't care what's in that ad. We have no responsibility. And that's not how it works in traditional media. They can be fined. They can lose their license. There are very harsh and quick penalties for them not monitoring and regulating what goes out on their airwaves, even if they've sold that airtime to somebody else. So, for example, Coke or Pepsi or Budweiser, they have to follow within a regulatory framework of those commercials as well. Now, on the internet, that is not the same. You can see ads that are illegal, whether it is promoting and the sales of cigarettes or medications. Here in Canada, we have laws that prevent people from advertising pharmaceuticals. In the States, that's different. They allow that. So again, it's up to each region. But again, on television, you can have some control. On the internet, there is no control. And this has been a battle for many years now about where does the responsibility lie. Now, Facebook and YouTube and everybody else has always maintained that they are not responsible for the content. They are strictly the platform in which people use to deliver the content of their own. So again, they have tried to push this off. Now, the regulations have gotten tighter about the misinformation, about illegal content and different things. But as you heard in that segment of the report, again, again, they are fighting back. They don't want to spend the money. And when I say they, I'm talking about the different online platforms and web services and social media. They don't want to invest the money to really go at it head on. Instead, they want to bring in some of these flimsy controls or automated filtering systems that will flag things and automatically remove them, but not catch it all. And again, it comes down to money and the fact that this stuff sells. It sells it sells to the consumer. People want to see stupid videos. People want to see dangerous stunts. People want to see people making jackasses of themselves and making jackasses of other people. And even though some of them are quite scary when you think about how dangerous they are, and the fact that some of these social media pranksters have been shot and killed as a result of these pranks they play on strangers. But again, the big platforms wash their hands, saying that they are not liable for the content that's hosted there. Again, traditional television wouldn't get away with that, so why do we allow them? But getting back specifically to the AI portion of it, is that, as I stated earlier, it can be very, very customized to your unique circumstances. When they look at your search history, the web pages you watch, the television shows you watch, news reports that catch your eye, they can use those different algorithms or those different data points to make these videos within a snap of a finger to target you directly, and even have your name in the advertisement or the propaganda flyers or news reports, things like that. So again, it can be very, very personalized, which is really a very effective way to try and get people to change their minds, to get into their mindset subconsciously, to help to direct a certain belief or to change that belief system. And again, it's all about that mind control or the psychological warfare of the misinformation. Now, if you wonder why it is so important, you can go back to 1938, and a lot of our audience probably weren't around then, and I know I sure wasn't, but I've always heard in the media about Orson Welles, and there was a radio segment back at that time that they did, and it was what was the name of that one? That was War of the Worlds. That's what it was. Sorry, I had to think about that for a second. So War of the Worlds was a radio program that mimicked actual real news reports. And they used sound effects and all of that to make it seem urgent. And the whole premise of the show at this point was that Martians and aliens were taking over planet Earth. But it came across as so real on the radio because it was still considered newer technology back then, believe it or not. But people believed it because they were used to hearing these certain sound effects and these certain ways of speaking and introducing it. As they mimicked a real news report, people thought it was real, and they actually caused a mass hysteria and panic. And it wasn't just within one small area. It actually caused a panic around the world. Other news agencies were picking it up as if it was real. And that, again, really brought in the need and the reason why there were standards and regulations put in that outlined what responsibility and ethical responsibility that they had to the listener of the radio at the time. Again, it's all about that media consumption, and if you make it seem realistic enough that people can associate it with reality that they know, then you have that opportunity to actually create a real panic, a change in behavior, and a very dangerous world, Angus.
Yes, it's, I think, really to conclude this whole sort of segment for the week's review of AI, I think, yeah, you can just summarize it in one simple sentence. It is dangerous and it's frightening. Yeah. The power now that AI has, and just every month almost that passes now, it seems to take another leap forward. It is on this exponential trajectory of improvement. It's frightening how fast it is developing, how powerful it's becoming, and as I say, every month and certainly every year that passes, they are reaching more and more powerful milestones of capability with AI. The only thing really missing at the moment, thank heavens, is some form of sort of sentient consciousness. God help us all if AI ever gets that. But that's another issue. But ultimately, yes, as a tool, whilst it still remains a tool in the power, in the hands of human beings, it is extraordinary what it can achieve. I mean, those audio segments that you put together, James, again, you would never know listening to that. If you'd asked me if I thought that was AI, I would have said no. It has so much nuance, so much detail. They've really managed to work out the nuances now. The intonations are so correct. Just the little details that I talked the other day about the vocal fry. Even just little affectations that make you subconsciously think, oh, it must be real because the slight flaws in it, human flaws, not technological flaws, but human flaws. That noise that some people make, but also they've managed to interject the sort of, again, the human flaws of when you're thinking of something to say. Even those are interjected. So again, it's making you subconsciously think it's real. These are real people, and that is how powerful and dangerous it is. Because then once you've got the platform, the broadcast capability. The world is your oyster, as they say. You can literally say anything. You can make AI say literally anything. And again, this is where its power comes in. It can write itself. It can write its own script. You just give it a prompt. You say, I need you to say X, Y, Z, but in the form of ABC. In other words, you can actually totally control what it says. And it comes out with a perfectly written script designed to achieve the message and designed to achieve the goal that you've asked it to do. And once again, you just listened to that last broadcast and it was extraordinary, I have to say. And it's actually, I have to say, it slightly terrified me just how powerful it is. It's even more powerful than I realised. And in the wrong hands, as we talk about, and this is what really matters, in the wrong hands, it is deeply dangerous. Now in India, and when we turn it on India, we do know that India has this totally authoritarian control over its media, over anything online, over its media productions, radio, television, online, whatever. We do know that the Indian people are tightly controlled about what they can view and hear online, on television, whatever, the so-called Godi media, as it's called, puts across one narrative. That is the narrative of the Indian government, of Modi's BJP and that Brahmanical elite. There is only one narrative that the general population of India are exposed to. If they try and find out alternative views, it's very, very difficult. They need to go outside of India through VPNs or whatever. They need to get online and try and tunnel their way out. Literally, it's almost like Soviet Union. They need to, metaphorically speaking, tunnel their way out to find the truth, to find an alternative narrative like us, hence why we are banned. And so the Indian government, through it's got its own ministry that controls anything to do with online activities. And again, it's almost Orwellian in its power. It controls and ensures that the Indian people cannot get access to websites, news outlets, whatever, that puts across another alternative. But instead, this hugely powerful, hugely resourced media infrastructure that is in place. And you talk about ANI. Yes, these huge conglomerates, these big media corporations that control pretty much everything that is produced within India and broadcast to India. Yeah, they are the conduit. They are the only outlet that Indian people really, on the whole, get to see. And of course, if people like ANI can then generate, the only restriction in the past was they needed human beings to write these articles or to produce this material. Well, that previous bottleneck has just been removed because they can now go onto any old laptop, any old PC, type into an AI engine, right, produce 1,000 articles saying X, Y, Z. And within minutes, there they are, all beautifully written, all proofread, all ready for broadcast. And then they just feed that into their massive propaganda machine, which they know then disseminates, not just in India, more worryingly, it disseminates globally, because of course, then all the aggregators, whether it's Yahoo or Microsoft or whatever, they pick up these articles, they see the name ANI on top, think, oh, it must be okay, it must be credible, it must be true, because it's come from ANI, this massive conglomerate in India. So they regurgitate it, they reproduce it, they again spread it around the internet, and other people, smaller news outlets, pick it up and say, oh, this has come from Yahoo, it's come from Microsoft, it must be true. So they regurgitate it, and round it goes. And then the wider these news articles go, the more credible that they become, the more people who try and corroborate the truth. They read an article, is that really true? Yeah. They'll go online, they'll do a Google search, and 100 results come all saying the same thing, whether it's from Microsoft, it's from Yahoo, it's from ANI, it's from all, corroborating that story that originally was probably generated by AI back in India like 20 minutes ago. By some Hindutva operative. That's how dangerous this is, and I'd say it's absolutely frightening. It really heralds a new era in media news, and it's something that we all need to watch. And again, you alluded to something very important here: is that people out there who watch the news, and they get the news from all different sources now. These days, the young they don't watch the mainstream news anymore. They get their news from YouTube and from various platforms like that. But of course, because now the young particularly are becoming more and more tech savvy, they are becoming more critical, more suspicious of everything they watch and hear, and which is no bad thing. In fact, it's a very, very good thing that they always question. And it's been now, fortunately, certainly here in the West, it's being drummed into them at school level in their educational upbringing. They are told, when you are online, always be careful of what you read and see. Is it true? Question it. Don't necessarily believe everything you see, because the internet is full of deep fakes, videos, audio, as we've clearly demonstrated, and fake news, misinformation. So always question it. Then the downside of that is when genuine news, genuine warnings come out, like the Sikh community, a story I'm going to talk about shortly is a prime example. The Sikh community very often stand up and point out there is a danger here. This is misinformation. You've got to watch out for this. They're always pointing to injustice. But of course now, ordinary innocent people are going to say, is that fake? Is this Sikh standing up saying, watch out for this? Is that misinformation? Is it AI produced? Is it real? Can I believe it? So they start to lose trust in anything. There is no source now that you can genuinely trust anymore. The BBC, for example, here in the UK lost trust years ago. Who watches the BBC here in the UK anymore? Very, very few people watch BBC News. In fact, ironically, it's only the older generations who were indoctrinated to believe the BBC. The young don't watch the BBC anymore. They don't believe it, they don't trust it, they don't watch it. They are on YouTube. And again, another point that you raised, James, is the platforms. Okay, how on earth do we control this? What can we do about it? Well, the platforms like YouTube, they have a huge responsibility in this, and they have been very, very neglectful in this. Now, recently, YouTube did announce, fortunately, that they are now banning any videos that are produced or narrated by AI voices. Great. I mean, at least it's something. But that's not really the issue. The real issue is it's the content, the material. If it's generated by AI, if it's written by AI, and quite often it's visualized by AI, and you would never know. And these whole videos that are mass produced, YouTube is full of rubbish. It's full of mass-produced AI rubbish, where every young producer around the world in his bedroom or her bedroom have got these automated workflows, all using AI to generate content for YouTube, which means YouTube now is just so diluted with rubbish, AI-generated rubbish, it's sort of losing its power as a platform. YouTube, I'm sure, are aware of this, and that's why they are trying to clamp down. But this really illustrates the point that AI is now capable of producing mass volumes. Now, that quality obviously varies. 90% of it is rubbish, but in the right hands, for example, the Indian Brahmanical elite, in the right hands, it is dangerous, it's powerful because it is effective, and it carries with it complete technical credibility, because you believe what you're seeing and hearing in most cases. And then if the content is manipulative, is very, very cleverly written, as indeed AI does, then you will start to believe it, backed up by the infrastructure that spreads it around the internet. So if you try and corroborate it, you think it must be true because there's 100 other stories that support that same story. You think it must be true. How dangerous is that? And we find this regularly. Certainly James and I, when we're researching stories, we pick up a story and we try and corroborate it. Is it the truth? We try and find alternative angles to it. We just try and find other sources that confirm a story. Well, what I certainly find is, if I find a story certainly relating to India, if I Google search it or go through the whole internet looking for corroboration, I usually find all the corroboration all from Indian outlets, pages and pages of Indian Govt media outlets confirming it. Is there any alternative views contradicting it? Very, very hard to find because they are so suppressed, they are so buried. They might be on page 23 of Google because they've just been overwhelmed by the power of the Indian media. And that's the problem, James. It is so dangerous. We really, really need to keep an eye on this and just be aware of it and keep making sure more and more people become aware of it.
Well, and that's just the scary part of it, Angus, is that so many people, and no offense to our viewers, but there are so many people online that are lazy. They don't want to take the time to disseminate truth from reality when it comes to the use of AI and misinformation news reports. And there is a massive benefit to AI. AI can bring a world of change, especially to places that may not have access to certain things. It's great for farming. It helps where they can use drones to fly over fields and help predict certain patterns. They can say where there's dry land, where there's bugs, all of that just by AI algorithms picking up that footage. So again, the way that it changes and has the potential is just incredible. Now, I'm going to give you a real world example of how it can make a difference in different places. Now, recently I had to go to the doctor and get some things checked and whatnot. And then out of curiosity, yesterday, after I'd gone through all of that stuff and I had to set an appointment with a specialist and whatnot, but here on my arm, I've got this growth here. So I don't know how well you can see it, but it doesn't matter. So I went and got it all checked out at the doctor, all that fun stuff, got a specialist appointment, and then took a picture of it and there's an option on Google. You just check for the photo. And so you take a picture of whatever, put it on Google, it comes back. And right away it came back, squamous cell cancer. And that's exactly what it was. It's like, wow, that is scary because within 2 seconds, I had the same information that I'd spent days of doctors and specialists and tests and everything else, but it just shows the supreme power of the future with AI, machine learning, and that technology. I mean, you don't want to rely on it for any of that stuff, but it just shows where we're heading in the future and how quick and impactful that can be for data gathering or for analysis, Angus.
Indeed, absolutely. And as we say, AI is extremely powerful, but in the wrong hands, it's dangerous. In the right hands, it's very good. It has so much to contribute to humanity. But ultimately, once it gains sentience, we're all in trouble. And the trouble is we won't realize until it's too late. And because it obviously...
The robots controlling it then.
Indeed, yeah. Because the trouble is it thinks at the speed of light. We don't. So anyway, one day if we disappear, you know what's happened. We've been consumed by the machines.
I barely think, let alone at the speed of light.
Yeah, exactly. My life is a fraction of that speed. But anyway, let's move on. And yes, the British government has come under all sorts of criticism from all quarters for many things. And not least, it has just released its latest Joint Human Rights Committee report on transnational oppression here in the UK. Now, transnational oppression is a big problem, as we report on a regular basis. And this report, it runs to many, many pages. I've only had it was only released yesterday, and I've only had time to have a very quick skim read through it. But it has actually come up with some very important stuff. And but in terms of what's particularly relevant to us and the Sikh community, it really comes up rather short, to put it mildly. It does, I mean, for example, and again, I won't go through it in too much detail certainly today, but it does, for example, it does talk about the misuse of Interpol red notices by certain member states. And again, this is very pertinent to what I was talking about yesterday or the day before, about one of the activists who organised that anti-Modi protest at Chequers the other day when Modi visited last week. He was under an Interpol red notice issued by India. India had forced Interpol to produce what's called a red notice, basically to arrest this guy on sight. But it was misused. That was a prime example of a misuse of Interpol's red notices. So this report does say we are deeply concerned by the misuse of Interpol red notices by certain member states. And this does happen regularly, particularly for Khalistan campaigners who are, over the years, have been subjected to these red notices, Interpol red notices, sourced from India. So the report does report about that. And then it does talk about our inquiry received evidence alleging that many states had conducted transnational oppression on UK soil. Submissions included Bahrain, China, Egypt, Eritrea, India gets a mention, Iran, Pakistan, Russia, Rwanda, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, UAE, blah, blah, blah. Now, this is, I would put this in context, Eritrea, Bahrain, Rwanda, UAE. Now, transnational repression, I have to say, I can't often remember. In fact, I can actually remember never seeing any report of any transnational repression on British soil in memory perpetrated by any of those countries. Yet, those countries get big mentions over and above India. And again, it starts ringing alarm bells. And it goes on at great length. It says, a substantial number of submissions we received were personal accounts of transnational repression perpetrated by Eritrea. China, Russia and Iran were highlighted by witnesses as the three most flagrant perpetrators in the UK. All three of these countries have imposed sanctions on UK parliamentarians, including 2 members of this committee, in what appears to be a deliberate attempt to deter scrutiny and suppress criticism. Right, so China, Russia and Iran, but where's India? There's no mention of India. You do a keyword search in that whole report, 70-odd pages, the word India appears twice. You do a keyword search on the word Sikh. Doesn't appear at all. And yet, on a daily basis, we report on transnational repression against the Sikh community, about pressure on British politicians, influencing British politicians. Bob Blackman, a prime example. Politicians in the UK that are coerced, influenced, potentially on the payroll of Hindutva, to attack our Sikh community. We also have reported how members of our Sikh community have been served notices by our intelligence agencies, threat to life warnings. Yes, their lives are under threat from bad actors, of course, India. And yet, where does this appear in this report? No, they're more interested in Eritrea, in Bahrain, in Rwanda, in the UAE. And yet, one of the greatest perpetrators of transnational repression in the UK, India, has hardly got a mention. Now, unsurprisingly, the Sikh community are absolutely fizzing with anger about this. And I'm not surprised. They have said, for example, that they've named India alongside 11 other countries in its report. And the committee actually received 181 written evidence submissions from the community in its research, but only 91 were published, so less than half were published. At least one anonymous submission on Sikhs, including Sikh MPs being targeted, was initially published and subsequently removed due to concerns about the person being identified and potential reprisals. Now, a spokesperson for the political engagement of the Sikh Federation, Dabinderjit Singh, a friend of the show, I've interviewed Dabinderjit several times, is a very solid guy, and he's done a huge amount of work on behalf of the Sikh community here in the UK. Now, he's quoted as saying, after this, when this report was published, he said, around 20% of the published submissions mentioned the involvement of the Indian government in targeting Sikh activists in the UK. The committee spoke privately with representatives of the Sikh Federation in May. We are extremely disappointed the report does not accurately reflect the evidence submitted and published about the threat the Indian government poses Sikh activists. The report has downplayed the role of the Indian government, failed to mention Sikh activists, including Sikh MPs, also being targeted. We suspect this reflects pressure from the UK government, as it does not want to upset India in the same way as Canada. We have been given assurances by the committee leading up to publication of today's report that relevant ministers will look into the detailed evidence we have submitted. However, this falls short of what we expected and is an extension of UK government policy since 1947 to give in to India's transnational repression and resort to private diplomacy when it comes to targeting Sikh activists in the UK. So basically, just to sum that up, this report is a hatchet job. This report is a complete whitewash of India's transnational repression against our British Sikh community. In other words, it is very clear that Surrender Starmer has completely capitulated to Narendra Modi. Again, British government capitulating to the Indian government under Indian pressure to target our Sikh community, to remove any evidence, or at least not highlight any factual evidence that members of our community here in the UK and our Sikh community have been targeted with physical violence, with threats, with harassment, with intimidation, etc. from India, and yet they do not feature or barely feature in this report. Very clearly, there is an agenda at play here. Once again, that our British Sikh community has been deeply let down by the British government under pressure from India. It's so obvious, it's deeply transparent what's going on. Now, more concerning is that also reported by Debinderjit, he said next week they will reveal a serious data breach by this very same committee that has compromised the safety and security of Sikh activists, as the confidential information that was shared with the committee, evidence to help write this report, was shared by this committee with the Indian government. I mean, I'm hanging my head in absolute disgust, horror, appallingness. It's just incompetence at the highest level. The Prime Minister, his Chief of Staff, Security Minister and others have been made aware of this unacceptable data breach caused by what actually Debinderjit says is human error. So in other words, it was a mistake. But we wait to see what actions will be taken. So again, whether it's through deliberate actions or even incompetence, the British government have clearly passed on crucial, confidential evidence that now threatens the lives and livelihoods of Sikhs here in the UK has been passed to the Indian government. I mean, but it's par for the course, because of course we do know, for example, when Jagtar Singh Johal was arrested, he was arrested on the back of evidence of information intelligence being passed from our own intelligence agencies to the Indian intelligence agencies. In other words, once again, the British government and its intelligence agencies colluded with Indian counterparts to ensure that a British Sikh was arrested and remains in arbitrary detention ever since and has been tortured. Again, the hypocrisy of this British government just is appalling. And again, words fail me to describe not just the incompetence, but the deliberate agenda, once again, of this government. Now, we used to criticise the Conservative government, 14 years of Conservative government, and a very clear agenda to cause problems, let's euphemistically say, against our British Sikh community. Well, along comes Starmer and the Labour government, who was supported by up to 1 million voters within our Sikh community to represent their issues. What's happened since Surrender Starmer came into power? Well, he hasn't delivered this report, this investigation into 1984 Operation Blue Star. He hasn't released Jagtar Singh Johal, etc., etc. And now he is also bowing again to pressure from the Indian government to not highlight the fact that the British Sikh community are being targeted on a daily basis by Indian agents and Indian operatives. Avtar Singh Kandar, probably murdered by the Indian state. That whole incident has been buried and suppressed by the British government and British agencies. Why? We know why. Same reason. No investigations launched since, despite a highly suspicious death in the context at the same time when Hardeep Singh Nijjar was murdered in Canada. Contrast the British government's actions against those of the Canadian governments. They're absolutely black and white. Canada stood up to very clear injustice, oppression, anti-democratic, illegal activities of India. They called it out. Justin Trudeau stood up in his parliament and called it out. What did our government do? What is our government doing? What is Keir Starmer doing? Absolutely nothing. No, I lie. He's not doing nothing. He's actually acting on behalf of Narendra Modi. He is doing Narendra Modi's work for him in suppressing, persecuting, oppressing our Sikh community here in the UK. It's absolutely shameful, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And I mean, you look at these reports and you wonder who's really being investigated here, who's really controlling the narrative. Once again, it comes back to the favors of the different governments when it comes to Narendra Modi, whether it's trade deals ignoring the human rights issues, or if it is like this. Now, when it comes to Eritrea, or however you say that country's name, I've actually run into protesters by accident. I didn't know there was a protest going on until I actually, drove by it and stopped to ask them questions. And I've actually got some footage of that interview. I'll dig it up for another show. But it's very, very similar to exactly what you see coming out of India. So why was it not linked to India as well in terms of that type of activity? No, I think we know why, Angus.
It renders me speechless sometimes, the actions of this government. And again, it just frankly baffles me why the Sikh community have just been so easily duped by the Labour Party, because clearly the moment they got into power, They've just totally backtracked and betrayed every promise that they've made to the community. Vote for us and we'll do this for you. And as soon as they're in power, they've done absolutely nothing. And again, no, I'm wrong. Not just nothing. They've actually acted against those Sikhs who voted for that party. I think, again, it horrifies me. Which actually leads me conveniently onto my second story. And this is an interesting one. For example, there's quite a lot of criticism about the Islamic faith here in the UK and certainly across the West. And some of those criticisms include, for example, the Islamic, certainly the extremist end. There's a huge element of homophobia amongst the extremist Islamic community. For example, in many countries, they will literally throw gay people and lesbians off buildings to murder them, to kill them for the fact that they are gay. There is also the question about their treatment of women and how women are treated. And it goes completely anathema, completely opposite to the beliefs of Sikhi, where women are treated utterly equal on every possible level. And yet there are certain parts of the Islamic community that treat women very, very poorly, and certainly as inferior to the male. Now, what I've just said then, that sort of 30 seconds of what I've just said, very shortly will be a criminal offence. If I said that very shortly, I will have literally within hours the police knocking on my door to arrest me, take me away, and I can go to prison for saying what I've just said. Now, I have no doubt that most of our audience will agree with what I've just said. Perfectly legitimate criticisms and concerns about elements of the Islamic faith. The treatment of women, etc., the homophobia, etc., all sorts of other things. A lot of the history, Islam was spread by the sword in centuries past. It was literally through physical force, like Christianity, for example, was spread through physical force. Again, that is going to be a criminal offence to say that, because that is now going to be deemed as what's called Islamophobia. Now, the British government, and I'm going to go back to a report that's actually been written by Hardeep Singh in one of our mainstream news outlets, the Daily Telegraph. Now, Hardeep Singh has written a fascinating article, and again, it's come to the Sikh community and a member of the Sikh community to raise concerns about what is going on with this British government again in terms of its legislation. There's a working group that's been pulled together by Starmer's government. It's a working group on defining Islamophobia and anti-Muslim hatred. And they've produced reports, they've come up with definitions, and members of the British public right across the spectrum, and particularly from the Sikh community, are standing up and saying, hang on, this is something really dangerous that's going on here. It's all about free speech. It means that legitimate criticism of Islam is now going to be, under this new legislation, illegal. So I can criticize Christianity, I can criticize Jews, I can come up with all sorts of awful sentences and claims about Christianity or whatever. I won't go to prison for it, it's not a legal offence. But if I dare question elements that I might necessarily disagree with of Islam, like its homophobia, for example, or its treatment of women, that becomes a criminal offence, because that is deemed under a definition that this working group have now come up with as being Islamophobia, and therefore a criminal offence. Now, Hardeep Singh in his article has written at great length of this, and I just want to cherry pick again from his article what he's actually said. He said, there is specific mention in the group's terms of reference in this term of Islamophobia. Explicit reference is made to communities that are mistakenly identified as Muslim. So the specific mention of Sikhs, Hindus, Jains, Buddhists, yet not one member from these other faith groups have been included in the membership of this working group. So when this working group was put together to define Islamophobia, no members from any other ethnic group were included, or religious group were included. They were just Muslims. So, of course, Muslims deciding on the definition of Islamophobia. It's not healthy, is it? Now, other religious groups, such as Sikhs, Hindus, Buddhists, Christians, Jews, etc., are also recorded as being victims, ironically, of Islamophobic hate crimes, because they're all wrapped up, because they're all seen as foreigners. Quite often, when hate crimes occur against Sikhs, it's actually collated data-wise as an anti-Islamic, an anti-Islam hate crime, which, of course, is not correct. The problem being, Sikhs often face mistaken identity, and this, of course, happened after 9/11. We do know, for example, that quite often here in the UK, but certainly in North America, US, Canada, Sikhs are often mistaken for being Muslims by right-wing idiots. They sort of see the dastard, they say, oh, you must be a Muslim, you must be one of them extremist terrorists or whatever. And so, of course, many Sikhs are subject to hate crimes and attacks because of that. And Sikhs, as he said, Sikhs have faced a significant backlash following Islamic extremist attacks all around the world. Post 9/11, it was a Sikh who was murdered. The first person who suffered post 9/11 was a Sikh. He was that guy, that sad, innocent victim who was murdered at a gas station in the US after 9/11 by an idiot who wanted to take revenge for 9/11. He saw this Sikh and he thought, oh, you're one of them Muslim jihadists, and killed him. Likewise, here in the UK, we had the 7/7 bombings, as they're called. The first place that was attacked in revenge for that attack perpetrated by an Islamic extremist was in Gurdwara in Kent, that's southeast England. So, as a result, Sikhs are becoming targets of far-right thugs and ironically, also Islamic extremists. Islamic extremists are also targeting Sikhs. Now, as a result, the Sikh community have contacted Angela Rayner as one of our senior members of the British government. To say, look, we're really concerned about this whole definition of Islamophobia. Part of the fact it flies in the face of a definition of free speech. It really threatens free speech. It is also mislabeling and just not working for other faiths who are being accidentally wrapped up in this definition, and it's just creating a bad legal situation. But unsurprisingly, the government hasn't responded. As he said, is Labour's failure to include other victims of so-called Islamophobia not discriminatory in itself? Are all victims of so-called Islamophobia therefore not equal? Now, the problem being, of course, Islamophobia captures legitimate criticism of religious doctrine. And this comes back to how I started with this. Any normal criticism, any questioning, and this is the concern here. If I question anything about Islam that I don't agree with, thinking, is that really right? Does that belong, for example, in British society? That is captured under this definition of Islamophobia. I am breaking the law by doing that. So, of course, there are free speech concerns. For example, the Mayor of London and many Labour-led council risked censoring historical truth, like the fact that Islam, as I said before, was originally spread by the sword. Saying that, likewise, can be deemed as breaking the law. For example, also, Sikhs often object to halal slaughter. Halal meat has to be slaughtered in a certain way. It's barbaric, in my opinion. But the very fact that I've just said it's barbaric, again, under this definition, will be a criminal offence. My right to think that halal slaughter is barbaric, it will be a criminal offence. That, in any modern democratic society, is wrong. There's a serious problem there. And it's clear that one set of beliefs, Islamic beliefs, is being protected whilst another set of beliefs is being censored, which, of course, is inconsistent here in the UK, certainly legally, with the Equality Act of 2010. Now, the chair of this working group, a guy called Dominic Grieve, he's a KC, is a senior barrister. He's a piece of work. I've got my own opinions of Dominic Grieve. But anyway, he wrote a glowing foreword to the very report that launched this definition. So in other words, Dominic Grieve believed, great, this is brilliant, this. But alternatively, 37 cross-party peers, and that's in our House of Lords, our upper house of Parliament, recently wrote to Grieve and said, look, any non-statutory definition of Islamophobia or anti-Muslim hatred could have what they call a chilling effect on free speech and exacerbate community tensions. For example, they give another example of where it falls apart. A councillor was denied a mayoral role following accusations of Islamophobia. During the World Cup 3 years ago in Qatar, the Football World Cup, he published a post on Facebook that raised legitimate concerns about Islamic doctrine that restrict women's rights and criminalises homosexuality. So he was denied a promotion to become a mayor of a town because he was accused of Islamophobia. Again, under this definition, you criticise Islam's restriction of women's rights, you criticise the fact that they criminalise homosexuality, that is now or will be breaking the law, breaking this law. So, and it goes on, and again, we talk about the grooming gangs. Huge concern here in the UK. Clearly, a large portion of these grooming gangs has been perpetrated by members of the Islamic community. But discussing the ethnicity of grooming gangs has been avoided for fear of appearing racist, which we've pointed to regularly. So merely pointing to the overrepresentation of Muslim men convicted in these grooming gang cases could make someone guilty of Islamophobia. And therefore, if, for example, if anybody reports, if we as a news outlet say these grooming gangs were made up of Muslim men, that becomes a criminal offence. It's madness. Yeah. Clearly it's not a criminal offence. Clearly it is not wrong in any democratic norm or any democratic definition of free speech. It is not wrong to say that. It is a simple statement of fact. Yet, when you start legislating against statements of facts, we are going down an Orwellian route, a 1984 George Orwell route. In other words, authoritarian rule. This is what the Labour government really are about. They are an authoritarian government. This is why they don't represent the Sikh community in any way, shape or form. They've got their own agenda. And as Hardeep says in his article, he wraps up by saying, Labour, if they go through with this, could hand reform a 100-seat majority if they go through this with this legislation. I have to say, maybe that is no bad thing, James.
Well, you got to look at it from the point of reality and logic. And it seems like the further we go into the future, the less logic seems to come with us, Angus. I just don't get it. I understand that there is a limit to free speech, but I think that limit is being very, very restricted now. I don't think that it is a logical restriction. I think it's gone way too far to restrict people from voicing publicly concerns, opinions, and thoughts. And that's where we lose democracy, because people are afraid to speak out. You can look at politicians who fire back at public and slander people in the media, or you look at celebrities who may call out each other in the media. But this is just ridiculous. They can go after each other for slander, libel, whatever they want to do. But at the end of the day, to make it a criminal offense, to make an opinion known, that is a very slippery slope that I really want to see us pull back from the edge on, Angus.
Yeah, and the real agenda behind this is very transparent. We have a real issue here in the UK of the Islamic vote is growing in power, and I'm certainly not anti-Islamic, quite the opposite. As I like to remind people that who would ever accuse me of that, I've actually narrated the Quran. I actually am the voice behind one of the definitive English translation audiobooks of the Quran. So I'm clearly not anti-Islamic, but there is a genuine concern here that the Islamic community here in the UK is getting a disproportionate amount of favour from the government, from legislation, to the cost of our other communities, like the Hindus, the Sikhs, whichever minority you happen to be, Buddhists even. We have a huge multicultural society here in the UK, yet the Islamic population, who are now increasing in power, political power, a lot of MPs now, a lot of councillors are Islamic councillors, and of course the Labour vote relies on the Islamic vote in the Islamic heartlands of the UK, like the Midlands, London, etc. They are very Labour-centric areas because Muslims, on the whole, tend to vote for the Labour Party, like Sikhs tend to do. As a result, the pressure that they are applying on Starmer and his government is, you will protect us, and not just protect us, you will ensure that we get favoured status here in the UK. And this is the problem. Muslims here in the UK are getting a favoured status as a minority, and that is upsetting all the other minorities, rightly so, like the Sikhs, for example, who are saying, hang on a second, this is not right. We've all got to be treated as equal. You cannot favour the Islamic population against all the other members of the British population, whether it's whites or Sikhs or whoever, it doesn't matter. But that's really the crux of this whole discussion. And even having this discussion is soon going to become a criminal offence, and that is the serious concern here, James. But anyway, we must move on, as we've only got 2 minutes left to go through our comment section, so let us whip through our comments. Okay. We start off with Avtar Dillon. Thank you, Avtar, for your comments. You're a regular contributor. Only God knows the truth. I'm not an avid supporter of Khalistan. Why not? As I know many bad Sikhs as well, but India has been known to tamper with the religion and other numerous allegations. The world is an ocean of fire. Take care, indeed. Thank you for your comments. But yeah, it's interesting. Of course, you don't have to be a supporter of Khalistan. We are very clear supporters of Khalistan because we just believe in the concept. I think it is a very, very good concept founded on very good principles. And I think it would be such a good move for the world. But that is my prerogative. And your prerogative, likewise, is not to be a supporter of Khalistan. That is what all this is about. The whole referendum, the whole democratic argument about Khalistan that India does not like is that, yes, you have a right to not want Khalistan, but you also have an equal right to want it, should you so believe, James.
Absolutely, and we say that over and over again, Angus, is that you've got the right to vote in the referendum to say yes or no. It's that simple. You can make your voice and your opinion known, have your voice heard, and remember, August the 9th in Washington, D.C. is the next referendum.
Indeed, and our job, apart from spreading the truth, is to actually try and persuade you to support the idea of Khalistan because it is a good thing. It only brings good things with it. So hopefully, keep watching, be a regular watcher, and hopefully we, without the use of AI, will slowly bring you into alignment, aligning with us that it is actually a good thing. Anyway, stay safe. Stay safe says... I've lost the comment. Here we go. Post-truth politics, fake news, AI, basically. It's not perfect. No, it's not, but it is getting there. But it's not like the wonderful human brain. Absolutely. We can't lose the human brain. We need the human brain. But the worry is, James, AI is catching up.
Again, as we say, Angus, it's a tool to be used by people, not a tool that gets that uses people. We've still got to maintain that control and that authenticity that goes with it.
Indeed, maybe I watch too many sci-fi films, but there is we fear that moment when we become the tool of AI rather than AI becomes the tool of us. Let's hope we never get to that point. Jagtar Sidhu, the Indian government is behind this game. Yeah, absolutely. And salute to Bhai Nijar in Canada. Yes, of course, the Indian government is behind it. We know and we report on a daily basis what they are up to. Unfortunately, the British government don't seem to want to do to actually recognise that. They're just doing their bidding. Talking about tools, the British government has become a tool of the Indian government, as it turns out. And Bobby Singh says Modi's humiliated wherever he goes. Now, actually, sadly, I would disagree with this. He isn't humiliated. He should be, but he's not. He's actually feted. He's welcomed. He's handshaked by our leaders in the West. Why, James?
Well, I think that it's funny that he's handshaked by the people in the West in terms of politicians and business leaders, but at the same time, he knows that they're trying to cushion him from all the protests, especially, you look at Angus with the G7 or, just different events. He knows that people are pissed and they want to speak out, but that the politicians are protecting them, and, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, in reality, yes, of course, politicians have to shake his hand because diplomatically in front of the cameras, that's what they have to do. But what matters is what goes on behind the scenes, and that's really where he should be being humiliated. But also, Bobby, you continue to say there are hundreds of white Sikhs around the world. They should be involved in the Khalistan movement. Well, that is our job again, James, is to spread the word, is to try and recruit people into alignment with the whole concept of Khalistan, because we believe it would be so good, not just for the Sikh community, it would be good for the world as a whole.
Absolutely. And that's something that we reiterate over and over, especially, to have it as that buffer in between Pakistan and India, to be a good neighbor to both and really hope that they could bring some calmness to that region.
Indeed. And the final set of comments for this week starts off with SEC 10, says, true journalism, international news. Well, we do our best. And Achal Singh Gill says, respect for presenting a balanced programme. That's the key, yes. It's all about balance, the truth. We try to be as balanced. Of course, we come across as many of our critics say, you're not balanced, you're propaganda. Well, we're not. We're just actually giving the alternative angle to try and balance out the Gaudiya media. So, yeah, you can argue we ourselves are not balanced. We try to be, but we're not balanced. We obviously have our own agenda. But the whole intent is to balance the outlets out there, that at least there is an alternative narrative to what comes out of India. And we do, as you say, raise very valid concerns. And as Sikhas BK Oju says, it is Gaudiya media who keeps publishing such news with no facts in it. Indeed. So that is why we exist, James. We are there to at least provide some level of balance.
Absolutely, especially when you're as round as me. Balance is important, or I'd roll right down the hill.
And the final word of the show and of the week goes to Batchan Kaur Batchan. Thank you for your comment, and totally agree with you. I love you, Khalistan, Punjab, with a couple of love hearts, James.
Well, isn't that beautiful? Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Indeed. Thanks so much for watching, and do keep those comments coming in. As we said, we will be a little bit sporadic over the next couple of weeks. It is holiday season after all, and but do keep an eye out. But do certainly come back to us when we're back with our regular shows on a daily basis. But until then, please, as I say, you can contact us. Do keep the comments coming in after the videos. We of course do appreciate those. But you can email us directly at message@satlugetv.com if there's anything you want to bring to our attention. We will still, of course, be reading emails whilst if we are away. But that is it for another week. We look forward to seeing you again sometime over the next couple of weeks. Do have a great break if indeed you are on your summer holidays too. But that is it for another day. Thanks so much for watching. It is a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.